Here we've got about 70 people attending today, so very good numbers. I think it shows the interest that we've stimulated through the last 3 or 4 years that we've been running the customer experience survey. So just to explain how we're going to manage today, here's the agenda. So first thing is to mention that we're recording this because we're oversubscribed. So hopefully everyone's okay with us recording it. And if people haven't been able to make it, or if you've got colleagues that haven't been able to make it, then we'll follow up very quickly after this with a link to the recording. And questions and comments, with so many people on, it's going to be difficult to take things verbally, but please do put any comments or questions you have in the chat function, and Jack is going to keep an eye on that, and we'll wait until the end of the session, and then we'll try and, or Jack's going to try and make sense of all the comments and questions, and if there's some general themes coming through, then you can hopefully share that, and the team who we've got with us today can hopefully answer all that. So thanks for managing that side of things, Jack. So agenda today, got quite a lot to go through, but we're going to keep it really short and snappy. So I'm going to hand over in a second to Emma Bernstein, Strategic Project Lead at Sport England, just to go 5 minutes on the context and importance of this community customer experience survey. I'm then going to do 10 minutes just to remind people of some of the key numbers and findings from the 2023 survey. Going to hand over to my esteemed colleague, Simon Shibley from Sheffield Hallam, who's going to be giving some examples of some of the deeper dives and linking of the different data sets that we've been looking at. And this is quite exciting because for the first time, we've been taking things from that are coming through in terms of data, participation from Quest, and linking them to the customer experience survey. So some really interesting things happening there. We'll then move on to Sarah Lobo from Quest and Right Directions, who's just going to do 5 minutes on how we are linking up Quest and the customer experience survey results. 5 minutes from my colleague Jules, just some examples of putting findings into practice and what do these findings mean for us in terms of trying to create a great customer experience. And then we'll move on to the questionnaire for 2024. And then I'll hand over to Sarah Forster, who most of you will be aware is the key admin person for this survey, just to cover off key timelines and deadlines. And at the end, as I say, Jack's going to keep an eye on comments and questions, and we'll try and answer them at the end. So a good agenda, and we've got a great panel of people to hopefully keep everyone stimulated for the next sort of 50 minutes. Okay, so let me just add in a few stragglers. And we'll kick off. So, Emma, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and good afternoon, everybody. Good to see everybody on the call, and yeah, thanks for your interest in this topic. It's a really key milestone for moving communities. This one, actually, wrapping up the last customer experience survey, where we're seeing good numbers coming through on this survey that give us really one of the largest samples, if not the largest sample, of experience data across this part of the sector. And looking forward to the next one, I think in terms of the trend over time, we're really building quite the wealth of data that we're able to now benchmark and compare. So just a big thanks from me, first of all, for the input to date, but equally for the interest as we move this forward. I think just for a bit of context, in terms of moving communities and its importance at Sport England, it's growing all the time. As I mentioned, not just in terms of scale, but I think in terms of importance of being able to articulate clearly the value that this sector brings and the role that it can play with providing opportunities for people to get active. That was always the vision when we set it up in terms of the response to COVID and the National Leisure Recovery Fund. We had one eye on understanding returns, but equally we knew the bigger picture, and I'm really pleased with the scale that we've reached in terms of over 1,300 sites now submitting live data to us in a really dynamic fashion across some key performance indicators, of which customer experience and the focus on that today is absolutely adding colour and flavour to some of the numbers that we get through on participation and finance. We will maintain it as a free service moving forward to local authorities and their delivery partners. we find value in it both nationally and hopefully locally. You're picking up that same value by using the benchmarks and the comparisons and using that as part of the continuous improvement journey locally. So that's a commitment from us. Now, I know it does take time and effort to upload data to the platform, but as I say, hopefully in terms of that value exchange, particularly with the social value calculator, it starts to give you benefit locally, identifying options for investment and driving decision making around policy for these services. Thanks, Mike. If you're driving, I think you're on the slides. So just in terms of how it works, I've mentioned already those important KPIs. There is that left-hand side of the chart that looks across the different data buckets, and we've actually added the sixth one, which is the energy data with the Swimming Pool Support Fund rollout and the emphasis there on environmental sustainability. So a number of different data points coming together, and I won't go through all of them in detail, but if anybody would like further information about how to gather that data in the most effective way, then the team's always happy to work across any of those metrics and help you and your centres with the participation or financial upload. You can reach out to the email address. We can pop it in the chat, I'm sure, and equally on the Quest side, Sarah will cover some points on that later, and you can pick up with the team. But that data goes through a huge process of standardization to enable us to compare like for like information and present that back in the dashboards that you see in the middle of the page. And there's a number of filters that you can dive into the detail. As I say, both locally but equally nationally, we're able to compare and contrast and perform analysis across time periods, across different types of sites, across different types of activities, and understand the social value that's generated from those. It's all behind secure access portal, so you need a password. It's not open data, you need a login, and that login allows you to see data that is relevant to you and your user access level. So one thing we've been very careful from the beginning and will continue to be is maintaining the confidentiality and therefore the confidence in the data that we have on the platform. So for example, Sport England and national bodies get the amalgamated view of all of the data. We can't see site by site information unless we've got that direct link through a funding agreement that enables us to access that. Similarly, an NGB, or let's take a service provider, the next one down, in terms of one operator looking at another operator's details, that's not something the platform allows. So that will maintain confidentiality and commerciality across that platform. So in terms of wrapping up, I think those are my two slides. But again, thanks from me and from all of us at Sport England who are using this platform. It's adding a huge amount to how we're able to articulate back to our partners, and particularly central government, around the value of this part of the sector. And as I say, the customer experience information that we'll go into now in more detail, it is a real key part of that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. I think that that slide, particularly the block on the left-hand side, shows how we can now start joining up those data sets, which is really exciting. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we come to Simon's and Sarah's session. So a quick reminder to everyone, really, before we move on, about the survey and the sort of methodology behind it. So it's an annual survey. We always carry it out in this window between June and October. It's an online survey to keep it very cost effective and hopefully fairly quick and easy for all the local authorities and operators that take part throughout England to participate. And you distribute it via email to existing databases, but also hopefully use social media, possibly posters and leaflets to get as many of your customers / members to complete it as possible. One of the key caveats is that the sample is therefore self-selecting, and the results have not been weighted in any way. And therefore, it should be noted that every year we've run this, we tend to get overrepresentation of females and older age groups, and conversely, underrepresentation of males and younger age groups. The good thing, though, is that is pretty consistent. So there is a bias, but it's a consistent bias, which means that when we start looking at direction of travel on some of these questions that we've now asked 3 times, it's a fairly robust way of doing it, because we know that the sample is biased, but it's biased in a consistent way. And each year we review the survey, working with Simon, the Sheffield Hallam team, and also Sport England's Insight team, and it really does build on the work that that ourselves and Sport England have been involved with over the last, and Simon, in terms of the last 20 years. Those of you that will remember the National Benchmarking Service, we had a customer experience survey in this. So this is really the new iteration of that. So very quickly, because hopefully everyone's already familiar with this, this is last year's survey, which we put the national report out November, December last year, just to sum up the numbers, which just reiterate really that this is the largest survey of its kind in the sector. It's just England. Last year, we got just over 36,000 responses across 184 local authorities, 49 operators, really good cross-section of large, medium and small operators, and all the different models of operation, and a grand total of 614 sites. And remember that the report that you get back is at a leisure centre level. So for each leisure centre, you'll get an individual report. Key messages. I'm going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail, but just to sum up, as I said, the age profile is pretty, and the gender profile is pretty similar across the 3 years now. So whilst we know there's a bias, at least it's consistent. A few key points since 2022. One of the things we've noticed that travel to leisure centre has seen us by car has seen a 7% increase, while those that are walking has actually gone down. The activity mix of the respondents hasn't really changed. Overall satisfaction levels are still relatively high, with 43% satisfied, 38% quite satisfied. Generally speaking, older age groups more satisfied than younger ones. Overall NPS has remained the same as last year at 22. I'll talk a bit more about that in a little while. And there are some distinct differences in terms of gender around that NPS. Just to unpick those key ones a little bit more, here's a graph which summarises the last 3 years' surveys, and you can see the change and the increase in the number of people driving, and the decrease in the number of people of walking and cycling with, and indeed of public transport, although it's only the odd percentage there. So it'll be interesting to see whether that continues or not this year. The main activities provided in the first year we did this, there was still a little bit of a hangover from COVID. So the swimming tended to be heavily reflected in terms of responses, and that's sort of balancing itself out over the last 3 years. So the number of people, and this isn't obviously the best way of looking at how many people are doing different activities in your facilities. The other data sets in moving communities do that much more accurately. This is about us understanding what are the activities that people who complete the survey are doing. So we can see it's a little bit swimming biased, probably compared to the profile of activities participated in your facilities, but that is starting to adjust with more people doing group exercise, more people who are doing the fitness gym now responding as well. Let's have a look at NPS in a little bit more detail. So one of the key things for me, and one of the key challenges, I guess, is that overall NPS has remained the same as last year at 22, but it's significantly down from 2 years ago when it was 35. So the way I always talk about this was that when we came out of COVID, the people that came back generally were our core customers who were very loyal to us, and we seem to have a bit of a bounce back in terms of net promoter, but now that seems to have gone down in the last 2 years, and over the last 15-20 years that I've been working with NPS in the sector, we're now seeing some of the lowest scores in the sector that I've ever seen, which, and we can see in some of the slides I'm about to share with you, why that is. Interesting big split, significant difference between NPS by gender. So generally, females are giving us more promoter and less detractor scores than males. Let's drill down and try and understand why that may be. And this graph, this is the first year that we've asked this, sorry, last year was the first year we've asked this question. We're going to repeat it this year because we think it's incredibly valuable. So this slide is an important slide, and we're asking people how important the following elements, and you can see the top three: staff are helpful and friendly is the most important, centre being clean is the second, activities provide me with value for money are the three. And typically we always see those as the biggest three, the biggest, most important factors for people who are coming to visit centres. But then obviously the key question is, well, how satisfied are you with the delivery of the following elements? And it's interesting that we then start to see this this difference between importance and satisfaction. And staff are helpful and friendly is the thing that we're best at delivering, followed by teaching, coaching staff, and then value for money is number three, where it is indeed in terms of importance. And then I guess the crucial slide, and the one that sort of sums up perhaps what's driving down NPS over the last couple of years, are those what we call the gap. Let's look at this gap. So these are ranked in terms of order of importance still, but then we put in the delivery score, and the orange bar shows the gap. So for example, staff are helpful and friendly, we've got a 12% negative gap. We're under delivery by 12%. But the key one, and probably everyone, most people on the call won't be surprised by this, is still that issue around cleanliness. And it's really interesting that when we were doing surveying during COVID and immediately post-COVID, they were the best satisfaction with cleanliness scores that we've ever seen in the sector. And again, perhaps, not surprising, a lot fewer people coming in, incredible focus and resources going into cleanliness like never before. But for a variety of factors, that now seems to have slipped back, and we've got this massive gap of 33% between how important it is and how well we're delivering. And then value for money is the second largest gap at 16%, and the third largest gap is staff and being available to help when I need it. And I know Jules in her section is going to talk about some of the impact that some of the workforce issues that we currently have having on customer experience. So the biggest gap to important satisfaction is cleanliness. That's the key takeaway from that. Last couple of slides from last year. So this was a new question last year, which we're going to include again, was looking at the cost of living impact. And on the left, you've got the impact on ability to be active, just generally active. On the right, you've got impact on your use of sports, leisure, health and facility. And the interesting one here, and this perhaps could be seen to be counterintuitive initially, is that 40% of respondents said the cost of living increase has significant or some impact on people's ability to be generally active. But a lesser percentage, 31%, it had a significant or negative impact on their use of actual leisure and health facilities. Now, why might that be? Well, it may be that if people are committing to regularly using a physical facility, either casually or more likely through a membership, perhaps that gives them greater adherence to their exercise habit than if they're going out and doing independent exercise, walking, cycling, etc. It seems that, as I say, it had more of an impact on general physical activity, inside, outside, independent, or whatever, compared to those people that are using sports and leisure and health facilities. Okay, I think that's a good point to hand over to Simon from SRRC at Sheffield Hallam, who's just you've got the one slide, Simon, you're going to talk a little bit about some of the linkages, really interesting linkages that we're now trying to make through these different data sets.
Thank you, Mike, and good afternoon, everyone. Academics can be perceived as being windbags and take longer than they are entitled to. So I've got 5 minutes. I'm going to do this in less than 5 minutes. Let me say from the outset, I'm a bit of a nerd and I like data. But I think in the current environment, data and how you use it is a source of competitive advantage for operators. So having got the customer experience survey, what can we do with it? Well, one thing is we can take the postcodes and we can convert them into index of multiple deprivation profiles. Index of multiple deprivation comes in 7 forms, one of which is income. And so if we're interested in looking at what kind of people are using our facility from an income point of view, IMD can help us in that regard. The second point is around joining up data sets. And I'm really, really pleased to see Charles Johnston on this call, because Charles did some fantastic work around facilities planning model and so on. So we know who our customers are, that's the demand. We can then match it with supply, which we can get from Active Places Power to look at who our competitors are. And then if we're really clever, we can apply that to the facilities planning model, which will give us a catchment area and tell us the extent to which we're reaching the people who in theory we should be reaching, and therefore what our market share is. And that's a real advance. Next up, it's a really big thing in Sport England, in Uniting the Movement, and I think in our sector generally, equality, diversity and inclusion. And using the survey and possibly tweaking the survey, we can make an argument that we are serving diverse populations. I think in the past, public leisure facilities have done particularly well in serving the needs of women and people from ethnically diverse communities, but less well in serving people from lower socioeconomic groups and people with a disability. Next up, we can take the data and do, it's meant to read benchmarking, internally and externally. What I mean by internal benchmarking is comparing where we are now with where we were previously, and therefore monitoring progress over time. And what we mean by benchmarking externally is comparing ourselves with either other venues in our portfolio or competitors if they are prepared to share the data with you. But it gives you an opportunity to see how you're doing relative to yourself and how you're doing relative to others. And finally, something which is also really hot from the social value calculator and the policy direction that DCMS and Sport England are going in is computing social value. We've had quite a hard time in the sector whereby financial constraints have meant it's been difficult operating conditions for suppliers. But one thing that has always impressed funders and councils is the social value generated by the subsidy provided to public leisure services. And by calculating how often people use a facility, we have the opportunity to convert that into a social value and hence justify any investment in the activities that we're doing. And that's me done. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Simon. I had the timer on. You'll be pleased to know I made it 4 minutes, 10 seconds. So well done.
I'm a pro, Mike.
Okay, next, I'd like to hand over to Sarah from Questar D. Sarah, are you there?
Hi everyone, lovely to see you. Who put me on after Simon? I'm definitely not an academic and I waffle a lot more, but I will do my very best. Lovely to see so many familiar names and faces on the call today. I'm going to presume that you all know what Sport England Quest is. If you don't, please email me directly at sarah@rightdirections.co.uk, and I'm more than happy to spend a couple of hours bringing you up to speed. So our aim at Quest is to support facilities to deliver as consistent, excellent levels of customer service as possible to what is quite now a wide range of different customers. So customer journey is one of the 6 core modules that all of our customers do. will involve having a chat with your assessor on the day, and there's also quite an in-depth mystery visit where we come and visit your facility, make telephone calls, do social media and email inquiries, etc. And customer journey is an absolute focus for that. Now, as a true Quest fan and advocate, I know I'm a little bit biased, but I'm always telling people how wonderful Quest is and what the best are. So to name but a few, it can help identify and prioritise areas for improvement. It can help increase revenue and profitability, and it can help improve the quality of your services and facilities. And then the last point just to mention is that it can increase customer satisfaction and loyalty. Now, on that last point, you don't just have to believe me or Caroline Constantine anymore. Mike and his team, Active Insight, have kindly done a little bit of work for us. They've compared the NPS of the top scoring Quest sites in 2023, all of which participated in the 2023 Customer Experience Survey, and the results were absolutely fantastic for Quest. The top 10 Quest sites had an average NPS of 39, almost 90% higher than the average sector score. The reviewer suggests that organisations...
Well, Sarah, you keep coming in and out. You're muted.
Oh, can you hear me now, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay, so what the results would suggest is that customers who fully embrace the Quest framework and use the Quest framework within their day-to-day operations are surpassing customer expectations. So by completing a Quest assessment, we can help you focus on some of the key things that can help you improve your customer satisfaction scores. For example, have you set the right expected standards in your marketing? Is the joining up process easy? What's your onboarding process like? Have you automated communications and marketing? Do you have a strong referral process? And are you making the most of your personal trainers in your group exercise product? And do you embrace tech? By addressing some of those issues through your Quest assessment, it can really help to improve those customer satisfaction scores. So final point from me, Quest isn't just an assessment, it's a continuous improvement tool. And thanks for the work that Mike has done for Active Insights, we can now prove that there is a correlation between the customers who are scoring well on their customer journey within the Quest assessment and also the customer satisfaction NPS score. So please do fully embrace the Quest process, embed it in your day-to-day operations. And if anyone wants to chat more, just please email me directly. Thanks, Mike.
Lovely. Thanks, Sarah. Another person on time. So no pressure for you, Jules. You're next up. I think that's really interesting piece of work. And I was really pleased to see that there was this incredibly strong correlation between high scoring Quest sites and high scoring NPS. It's really good to see that. So we're just going to spend 5 minutes now in the company of Jules, Julie Allen from Active Insight. And I asked Jules to do this session really because she works with lots of organisations looking at this data, but then trying to turn it into action and coming up with strategies for actually taking people on a journey to improve their NPS and their overall customer experience. So Jules, 5 minutes just sharing your experiences and thoughts on some of the things we shared so far.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mike. And again, thanks, and lovely to see everyone today. I mean, to follow on from Sarah is fantastic, really, because, you know, one of the main challenges that we see when we're out working with operators is certainly that consistency of delivery. And one of the biggest gaps that we see when we're out working with operators is where operators are perhaps wanting to deliver a certain customer experience, but the delivery behind it just isn't there. So, for instance, with this data that we have from Moving Communities, we go out frequently and deliver our customer experience roadshows, and we look at the customer experience that operators are aiming to deliver. And with this data set, we can almost bust those myths. You know, we work with teams all the time who say, well, you know, Jules, people don't want to be spoken to. Members come through our doors, they've got their headphones in, they just want to get in and do what they want to do. But actually, you can't argue with 99% of over 36,000 people who say that they really value friendly, helpful, knowledgeable team. You know, 96%, sorry, of those 36,000 respondents said that they value teams being available when they need them. So again, we're trying to take this data and use it as actionable insights to change team behaviours, to change those priorities, because we know that the operators who have that higher NPS score, we're seeing, you know, typically with your promoters, they're talking about meaningful relationships with people, they're talking about personal connections, they're talking about that cleanliness. So all of that is being captured through NPS. So the Net Promoter Score is absolutely vital in giving visibility on, are we delivering on our customer experience? Yes, no. If not, where are the gaps? And that married up with Quest, with that wonderful structure, really helps then drive that experience forwards. I mean, I do only have 5 minutes, and for those on the call who know me will know that's a real challenge when it comes to customer experience. But one of the other points that I wanted to raise here is that where we're seeing some really great success with operators is they are empowering their teams and training their teams to understand who is coming through their doors. We've seen through one of our pilot studies within Moving Communities that over 70% of inactive people are more likely to come to a indoor leisure provision to start becoming active rather than outside. So again, do our teams understand who are coming through our doors and then can meet those members where they are and then tailor that experience accordingly? Mike, we were obviously talking about this a lot yesterday, and how can operators blend the digital experience and leverage technology to support the customer experience? And quite often we look outside of our industry to see, well, you know, let's take hotels, for instance, hospitality. You know, everyone understands and knows that they should welcome people when they come through their doors, that they'll acknowledge people. So how can we take best practice from other industries and bring it into ours so that we're delivering that consistent, memorable experience that ultimately means people want to keep coming back time and time again? And then we can really generate that behavioural change and get people more active more often. Moving Communities has been huge when we're out delivering our customer experience training. Again, you know, we've seen that through other studies, when it comes to inactive people, you know, the difference between remaining inactive and becoming active, 67% said that it's a warm welcome. So we need to drip feed this data into operations so that we can start to create memorable experiences that, like I say, keep members coming back time and time again. For anyone who wants to learn more about delivering memorable customer experiences, Sarah and I actually delivered a webinar recently all around stripping it back to basics. What do operators need to do to start to drive that NPS score up? So I'll drop the link into the chat after today's session, or again, reach out to myself or Sarah and we can help you design, develop and deliver memorable experiences. Thank you, Mike.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jules. Okay, right. I should have said, I think I did say at the beginning, but just to reiterate, anyone got any questions or comments, please do put them in the chat. There's been some of them being responded to straight away by the members of the team that are on here, and we'll pick up you know, any questions via Jack at the end. So let's move on now to this year's survey. So first of all, let's talk about the questionnaire for 2024. It's still being finalised. As soon as it is, a link will be sent out so you can all have a look at it. 90% of the questions are being kept the same for consistency and comparison's sake. We have tweaked some of the wording and moved some questions around to make it a bit more intuitive and flow better, but nothing that's going to affect our ability to benchmark against the previous 3 years. We've moved 1 or 2 questions. Last year we did have a question in about digital, and the feeling was that that's not going to change much year on year. So we've removed that. We tweaked that cost of living survey to reflect a 12-month period rather than a 3 to 6. So when we asked that question last year, we said, how has it impacted you over the last 3 to 6 months? Obviously, with the cost of living, the impact of cost of living now is perhaps lessening a little bit, but it may be that people need to reflect a little bit further back. So we're changing that to reflect backwards over the last 12 months. We've also added a couple of new Sport England inspired questions about the importance of the local leisure and sports centre in the community. So it'll be interesting to get feedback about that when you see the questionnaire. We do now have space for 2 to 3 more questions. So one of the things that we'd like you to do is, if there is anything that is missing from last year's survey that you think we ought to be adding on or focusing on a little bit more, please do put that in the chat function, and we'll be picking all of them up at the end of the session. Okay, so I'm now going to hand over to Sarah Forster, who does an amazing job on the admin and implementation of this. Sarah, do you want to just talk people through key timelines and dates for their diaries?
No problem. Good afternoon, everybody. I think we've had quite a good response so far. So basically, if you want to register to do the survey, you just need to drop me an email. I will add you to my list. And then when it comes to it, the 14th of June, as you'll see there, the survey links will be sent to you, which are site specific. This is before the survey goes live, 17th of June. You've got between mid-June, the end of September, to have the surveys completed, and it will close on the 7th of November. So if you could just drop me an email, I will add you to the list, and you'll be included in further comms as well, copy of the survey, etc., etc.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. That didn't you've got the you get the prize for the shortest
Thank you.
5 minute slot. Simon, you could have had an extra 2 or 3 minutes now, but we can't come back to you now, I'm afraid. Okay, so just to sum things up, so next steps, if you've not already registered, do so with Sarah Forster. Her email address is there. I put it in the chat as well. And I guess the key thing is to decide when you want to do it. We recommend a minimum 2 to 3 week period in terms of survey. Just let Sarah know about that. I can answer. I did see, Jack, one question in the Q&A, which I can cover off now, and that's in terms of how the survey is promoted out. Each leisure centre, just remind people, the way we do the analysis allows us to do the analysis by leisure centre, not by contract or local authority, but drilling down to each individual leisure centre, is that each individual leisure centre does have its own unique, slightly unique link. They're grouped together under operator or contractor or local authority, but each one is. So if you're going out on social media, it does need to bear that in mind. That if your social media is specific to individual leisure centres, then obviously you can put in the relevant link, can't you? But if you're going out with a general social media post, then it would need to try and direct the user or the customer to the correct link in relation to which leisure centre they use most, because that's the one that we want them to answer the questions about. Obviously, if you're going out via email databases or posters or leaflets with QR codes in your leisure centre, then it's a lot easier because you can send them straight to the correct link. Great. Okay, we're doing really well on time. We may be able to finish early depending on what you've got for me, Jack, in terms of any questions.
Yeah, we've got some questions coming in at the end here, which is great. So quick one from Dave. Can we get a copy of last year's survey?
Yeah, that's not a problem, Sarah. We've got that in Word doc. We've also got the report from last year, which would show obviously not just all the questions, but the responses. So again, if you want that, email Sarah and she can ping that back to people.
Great. Another one from Jody. Will we receive all of the data after the survey, or is there a threshold for amount of people that need to respond to get that data?
No, pretty much immediately. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Sarah, you're more familiar than I am, but the results per leisure centre appear online and you can access that straight away, and there's no minimum number. So even if you get one response, no, Sarah, you're shaking your head. Go on, carry on.
Fine. There's no limit to responses. There's no minimum, no maximum.
Yeah, and the results per leisure centre appear online, so that's where you see that. We don't do any paper reports like we do with the community survey. The main thing we do is once everyone's finished in October, November, we put it together and create the national report.
Brilliant. And then one last one is, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation from today?
yeah, again, I think what we'll do is, well, there's going to be a recording of this. So perhaps what we'll do is we'll send out a link to both the presentation and then a separate link to the recording. So we'll put the recording up online somewhere. The presentation is quite hefty size-wise. So again, we'll put that up somewhere and then send people the link so they can either view it online or download it.
Great. Yep, that's the end of the questions, and the only other two sort of questions that came up at the beginning were email addresses. So I know Sarah's email address is in the chat from Quest, and I've also put the Moving Communities support email address in the chat as well.
Brilliant. Okay, that's excellent. I like that. Looks like we can finish 15 minutes early. Everyone can have a break before their 3 p.m. call now, which is ideal, isn't it? So thanks, everyone. Thanks to the speakers for being so on point, succinct and timely. That's really good. Any other questions? I'll stay around for another 5-10 minutes and I can answer them online, or we'll download them and Sarah will come back to you. But look forward to everyone participating. Sorry, Jack, we got some more coming.
So one last question come through. Did you say it's a national report and not a local report?
Yeah, so we produce a national report, which is usually available by November. So, and that would be in the format of those findings from last year that I shared with everyone. So you get your local leisure centre report is online, and then everyone who takes part will, as soon as we produce the national report, you'll get that. And then what you can obviously do then, one of the key things you can do then is